All right, music fans, get those headphones ready because we're about to take a deep dive back to, well, the early 80s. You asked for a look at the U.S. music scene in early 81, and, well, we're not just going to skim the surface here.
No, no, we are going way deeper than that.
Exactly. Think like time capsule vibes, but for music.
I like that. A musical time capsule.
Right. So picture this. It's February, week ending the 28th, to be exact. What's blasting on the radio? What's got everyone grooving? Well, we've got the Billboard Top 40 for that week all queued up and ready to dissect.
And this isn't just any random week on the charts. It's a real turning point in music history. We're talking the tail end of disco, the rise of new wave, a whole new generation of stars about to take over.
It's big hair, shoulder pads, leg warmers, and the very, very early days of MTV. So much change happening, and the music, oh, it definitely reflects that. But before we hit play on this time capsule of ours, can you set the scene for us a bit more? What were some of those key trends we're going to hear reflected on the chart that week?
One of the things that jumps out at you right away is this kind of cool mix of the familiar and the brand new. You've got these massive names like, well, John Lennon, Blondie. They were still holding their own. But then you also have these fresh faces like Eddie Rabbitt and Sheena Easton just kind of like bursting onto the scene.
So it's like the old guard versus the new kids on the block.
Yeah, exactly. And get this. It's also that fascinating clash of disco's last hurrah. I mean, you got Kool and the gang still riding high, but at the same time, power ballads were huge. Think REO, Speedwagon, Styx, those big dramatic anthems.
Oh man, the power ballads, those soaring vocals, the like epic instrumentals, they just don't make them like that anymore. Okay, but it wasn't all just disco and power ballads. Right?
Oh, absolutely not. This chart is like a testament to how diverse music was back then.
Yeah.
You want country crossovers? Got them.
Yeah.
Rock anthems, plenty. Soulful ballads, even a little taste of what would become that huge synth pop explosion later in the 80s. It's all there.
Like a musical buffet. Okay, I can't wait any longer. Let's dive into this. Top 10. At number 1, dethroning Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 after its, epic reign. We've got Eddie Rabbitt with I Love Rainy Night. Did you know that song actually held on to the top spot for 2 weeks? It's got that undeniable early 80s sound, What do you think it was about that song that really clicked with listeners back then?
Well, you hit the nail on the head when you said early 80s sound. I Love a Rainy Night is practically a textbook example of what was known as, get this, countrypolitan. This super popular blend of, well, country and pop. And Rabbitt, he just nailed it.
So he wasn't just riding the country wave. He was like blending genres, creating something totally new. Do you think that's part of what made it a #1 hit?
Oh, for sure. Even before Rainy Night, Rabbitt was known for experimenting a bit, not being afraid to play with different sounds. And this song, with that infectious energy, those lyrics about finding joy in unexpected places, it just had this crossover appeal. Country fans loved it. Pop fans loved it. It just worked.
Wow, talk about a musical legacy. It really is amazing how a song can perfectly capture a moment in time, but then also have this lasting impact on music that comes after. Speaking of legends, holding strong at number 3, we've got John Lennon with Woman. Bittersweet, isn't it? Released just a few months after,
Yeah, Woman was Lennon's his love letter to Yoko Ono, and its success took on this whole other level of meaning after his death. Became this anthem for love and loss, really solidified his place as a true icon.
It's amazing how music can become even more powerful, even more meaningful when you connect it to the artist's life story. Do you think that shared sense of grief played a role in how well the song did on the charts?
I think it definitely did. I mean, people were mourning the loss of this incredible artist, and here was this incredibly raw, emotional song. It felt, in a way, like this final gift. Resonated with people on a whole other level.
It makes you wonder how Woman would be received if it was released today, in the age of streaming and social media and everything. Would it still have that same impact?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
It's tough to say for sure, but I think the emotion, that timeless message of love and loss, that's got to resonate with people no matter what. It might find its way onto heartbreak playlists, healing playlists, even just those chill, reflective playlists.
It's wild to think about how a song from another era could find a whole new life, a whole new meaning in a completely different context. But let's get back to our time machine here for a sec. Still in the top 10, but maybe not for long. Blondie's hanging on with The Tide is High at number 7. But their time at the top, well, it was coming to an end.
Yeah, they were on their way down for sure. Blondie's sound, it was like the epitome of that late 70s, early 80s vibe, And the music scene, well, it was changing fast. But their decline, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It just shows how music is always evolving, always making room for something new. Speaking of new, though, we've got Sheena Easton making her debut at, get this, number 34 with Morning Train, 9 to 5.
Sheena Easton. Wow, takes you right back, doesn't it? And it's pretty crazy she's got this debut hit about working life, and it's, what, the same year as Dolly Parton's 9 to 5. Talk about a parallel track.
It really is wild when you think about it. Two massive songs, both about working, within months of each other. It's not quite what you'd call an answer song, though, not technically. Easton's Morning Train is doing its own thing. But there's no denying they both, tapped into something people were relating to.
Right, like that whole work-life thing, it was definitely a big theme. Maybe it hit different back then, you know. Early 80s, that whole work culture. But before we go too deep on that, there's another track. This one's kind of a head-scratcher, actually. Tucked away at number 25, just starting its climb, Daryl Hall and John Oates, Kiss on My List. Can you believe that song was Every Else Like a Cast?
Right. I know. It's like this chart is giving us a sneak peek, a behind-the-scenes look at these songs before they became, legendary. Kiss on My List is a perfect example of what we call a power play.
Yeah.
On the charts, you can just tell. It's got all the makings of a smash hit. It's just building momentum. This was Hall & Oates right on the edge of, superstardom.
Power plays, I like it. So were there any other future legends kind of lurking in those lower ranks that week? Anyone else in that power plays category?
Oh, absolutely. Keep your eye on John Cougar, soon to be, John Mellencamp, of course. He's sitting pretty at number 48 with Ain't Even Done With the Night. You can just hear it, that raw energy, that heartland rock sound.
Yeah.
It's about to explode.
It's like spotting a future musical icon before they even know it themselves. But we've talked a lot about the up-and-comers. What about, the opposite? You mentioned this chart tells a story beyond just who's at number one. What's happening off the charts that week? Any surprises there?
Oh, tons. Actually, there were some pretty big names slipping down the charts that week, which just goes to show you, tastes change, trends shift. And the music industry is always in motion. Boz Scaggs, for example.
Yeah.
He had been huge in the late 70s, but that week, he was at number 42 with Miss Sun.
Wow, from the top to, what, number 42? That's a journey?
Right, and it wasn't just him. Even the Eagles, those kings of 70s rock, they were on their way down too. Seven Bridges Road, number 45 that week.
Wait, the Eagles at number 45. What were people listening to instead? Had tastes just changed that much, or?
It's a good question, and it reminds us that the charts, they're just like a snapshot in time,
Yeah.
Some artists were past their peak, while others were just revving up. It's like this constant changing of the guard, musically speaking.
Changing of the guard, I like that. And sometimes those transitions, they happen in the most unexpected ways. Case in point, Barbra Streisand and Barry Gibb teaming up for a duet. Guilty, number 43 that week.
Now that's a power couple, if I've ever heard of one. It's those unexpected collaborations that really shake things up sometimes. That Streisand-Gibb duet, it shows you the power of bringing together two incredible voices, even if it's not the combo you'd expect.
It makes you wonder, were those kinds of collaborations more common back then? Or was that just a one-off, a moment in time? But you know what? Before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's get back to some of the songs themselves. We've talked about the hits, the rising stars, even those fading legends. Now let's actually listen to a few of these tracks that deserve a deeper dive. And for our first stop, I think we got to go back to Eddie Rabbitt. I Love a Rainy Night.
Excellent choice.
Yeah.
A classic for a reason.
A country song topping the pop charts, like you said. It's all about that crossover appeal, Rabbitt's ability to blend those genres. It's catchy. It's got that driving energy. But there's also this almost timeless quality to it. It could be playing at a party today and no one would bat an eye. Do you think that's part of what made it such a monster hit?
Oh, totally. I Love a Rainy Night. It's like a masterclass in pop songwriting. It's got those infectious hooks. The lyrics are relatable. Everyone's been stuck inside on a rainy day. And that chorus, forget about it. You're singing along by the second time you hear it, guaranteed. Plus, that whole country pop thing, that gave it a little edge. Can you imagine, hearing that on the radio for the first time back then?
Yeah.
It would have been, both familiar and totally new at the same time. Speaking of new, could I Love a Rainy Night even be a hit today, do you think? I'm picturing a remix maybe, a driving beat, a guest rap verse.
Now you're just making me wish we had a time-traveling DJ or something. But I see what you mean. It's got that universal appeal, that feel-good vibe that just, it works, It could transcend generations. All right, next up on our deep dive listening party here, we got to talk John Lennon, Woman. This one's, well, it's more than just a chart topper, isn't it? It's like a whole statement. Love, loss, the power of music.
It really is. To think it came out just weeks after his death, and it resonated with so many people. Showed a different side of Lennon, too. Vulnerable, reflective, completely smitten with Yoko.
It's true. It's like you really hear that love in his voice, and it makes you think about how the meaning of that song, how it might have changed for people over time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Right.
back then it was this very personal expression, right, coming from like a musical giant. But over the years, it's become more universal, like an anthem for anyone who's loved and lost, who's felt that deep sense of longing. You don't even have to have been alive when John Lennon was around for Woman to like hit you in the feels. It's just one of those songs.
It's timeless. Speaking of timeless, our last deep dive takes us to, well, a debut hit. Sheena Easton, Morning Train, 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Such a fun, upbeat track. And I gotta know, what do you think about the fact that it came out the same year as, well, the working person's anthem, Dolly Parton's 9 to 5?
It's kind of wild, isn't it? Two big songs, both about work, within months of each other. But here's the thing. Easton's Morning Train, it wasn't trying to be 9 to 5. It's got its own vibe. Dolly's song was all like sass and empowerment, right? Morning Train, it's more about that like everyday joy, the anticipation of a fun night after a long day.
And musically, they're worlds apart. Easton's got that dance pop energy that was just starting to bubble up. It's like the perfect soundtrack to like those early morning commutes. Gets you pumped for the day, makes you wonder, what would a 2024 Morning Train remix sound like?
Oh, man. I can hear it now. That driving beat, some electronic flourishes. It'd be huge. But even without the remix, it just shows you a song's message, it can stay relevant no matter how much the musical styles change around it.
It's true. It's like musical evolution in action. We've time traveled back to 1981, explored a pivotal week on the Billboard Top 40, unearthed some real gems. What stands out to you the most about this little slice of music history?
I think what gets me is how much this chart captures that feeling of being on the edge of something new. Like changes in the air, you've got these icons, your Lennons and Blondies kind of nearing the end of their reign, and then these fresh faces like your Eddie Rabbitts and Sheena Eastons, they're just starting to make waves. And the music itself, it's that same mix of like the familiar and the brand new. It's exciting.
It is. That energy, that possibility. I think that's something that always resonates with music lovers, no matter what era you're into. So, to everyone listening, we want to hear from you. If you could hop in our musical time machine, go back to February 81. What song from this chart would you have on repeat? Let us know in the comments, and hey, maybe your musical memories will inspire our next deep dive. Until then, keep exploring those musical time capsules.